Hi everyone, it's Thursday evening, how are you? You guys are live here on the Dixie Belle Paint Facebook page with Brush by Brandy. My name is Brandy, and I'm here tonight. We paint together every Thursday evening, and this is the piece we're working on tonight. So I'm doing kind of a fun look. I'm pretty excited to do it with you guys. We are going to make chalk paint get chippy. Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. If you've tried it before, you'll know. You guys, my husband Sean is here to answer any questions. If you got questions along the way, let me know.
Are we going to get chippy with it?
We're getting chippy with it. Yeah, that's what the description says. Okay, so this piece here is actually a custom order piece, and it's meant to go with another piece that I've already done that has a very old world farmhousey feel. And so me and the customer exchanged photos, and we came up with this body color, which is this rich green color here. And I mixed this green. This is a custom mix of Dixie Belle Evergreen, French linen, and collard greens. So it's heavier on the evergreen, and then just a little dab of the French linen, little dab of the collard greens, and it gave me this rich kind of farmhousey green. Kudzu was close, but it wasn't exactly the right color, so I mixed that up. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm going to be working on these drawers over here. So we're going to start with stage one. And stage one is this drawer here. So this drawer is just the wood. I cleaned it with Dixie Belle White Lightning, and then my piece does have a coat of Dixie Belle Boss on it. And Boss is a stain and odor blocking primer. This is Boss in clear. And I use the clear because I want to be able to distress, and I want to see the wood underneath. It comes in clear and white. I did not want to see the white underneath. So it does have that stain and odor blocking primer on it, and this is what we're going to start with. So the first step in this look, you can see that there's this is unsealed paint, so my colors will get more vibrant when I seal it, but you can see that there's bits of mustard yellow peeking through under here. It genuinely looks like this has been painted a few times. Look at that right there. I'll just scrape that a little better. So we're going to do that step first. So for that, I am using Dixie Belle Golden Years. This is from the Flea Market Decor line. And it is a mustardy yellow. Where did my brushes go?
Oh, up here.
Oh, thank you. That'll work. Hey, Sas, can you go get me more off my sink over there? I got a whole bunch and I don't know where I put them. Okay, so for this look, I actually did a sample board. I never do sample boards, but I played with a couple different techniques, so I kind of want to show you what we did. So on this sample board, I just have a light lavender color under Dixie Belle Mermaid Tail. And you can see here how I got these pock marks in my paint. That's what I'm going to do here. So it's got texture to it, and these little pock marks, you can see the color underneath peeking through. That's what we're going to do. Thank you, baby. So I tinted my Golden Years with a little bit of chocolate. I just put it right into the chocolate right into my container because I wanted it to be like a rich, darker mustard, not quite so bright. I'm actually going to lay this paint on really heavy. Heavier than I would normally put on a coat of paint. And you'll see in a minute, I'll talk to you guys about why I'm doing it that way. So I'm kind of glopping it on, but I'm still trying to at least, you know, make it somewhat even and cover my wood. I'm working kind of quickly because I'm in California, you guys, and my paint is drying a little fast, but the thickness of this will help me right now. Help me for it to not dry so fast. That side looks good.
So you're not misting it?
Not yet. Not yet. I do have a mister bottle out, but I'm not using it at all yet. I'm just going really heavy on this paint. We will use a little bit of water in just a second.
What's the name of this yellow?
This is the Golden Years. This is from the Flea Market Decor line. So Dixie Belle paired up with Flea Market Decor magazine and came out with a limited edition release of 6 colors. And one of them was this Golden Years, which is a mustard yellow, and then I just tinted it with a little bit of Dixie Belle chocolate. Okay, so my paint is on here nice and thick. It's not dry at all because it's so thick on there. And then what I'm gonna do, but it's not pooling anywhere. I don't want it so thick that it's pooling. And then my secret weapon in this, are you guys ready?
Dun dun dun.
Coarse salt. So I'm gonna
But it has to be kosher?
Yes, make sure it's kosher. No, the reason I chose kosher salt over like an iodized salt is because kosher salt has larger grains. So that's what I want. I want the larger grains to it, more so than I care that this is actually kosher.
What?
Yeah, I know, how insensitive of me. And I'm going to sprinkle this all over my piece. I'm putting salt directly on my piece. Okay.
Making a rain with salt.
So here's the deal. I want to kind of sprinkle it all over. It's not going to all stick, so we're going to lose some of it. And then once it's sprinkled on there, I'm going to come back with my water and I'm going to spray right over the top of my salt. And what the water does is it's going to start the salt kind of dissolving and make it stick, embed itself into my paint.
You try Epsom salt?
I didn't. I just went to Target. Epsom salt would work. This was what was on this shelf in the salt aisle. So by any means, if you've got another kind of salt that has...
Chance it.
yeah, the larger size, I don't see why it wouldn't work. This is just what I grabbed off the shelf because it had the larger grains in it. So now my paint is kind of wet. So this is going to start embedding itself into my paint. And what's going to happen is when I come back to put my final coat over, there's going to be a resist. And when I scrape this salt off, it's going to, some of it's going to come down to the wood, where the salt embedded down to the wood, and some of it's just going to take my top layer of paint off. So I'm going to let this dry. It's not dripping, but even if it is, let me turn this to the side. So my side over here, it started dripping in a couple places, like right up here, and that's totally okay, because this is made to look like it's got layers and layers and layers of paint on here.
So Mia wants to know if, what would happen if she added it to the paint.
I don't know. Do a sample board, Mia. Honestly, I don't know what would happen if you added it into the paint. I put it on over the top with the water, so I can't, I'm not sure. I don't know, I don't want it necessarily embedded into the paint because I do want this to come out later. I'm not going to leave it like this. So let me show you guys. This is a drawer I did last night.
I'll scoot over.
Okay, this one's got a little bit less salt on it, but that's okay because I want a little bit of variation to each drawer. So I don't want to rub this too hard because I'm not ready for it to come off, but you can see my salt is pretty well embedded into my paint. So it sticks in there. But I'm not trying to take it off yet. So I'm going to leave it on. I'm going to come back with my mixture of green paint. And I'm going to go right over the top. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kind of glob it on. I don't want to take this salt off. So
You're basically sandwiching the salt.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to rub it off of the paint. I'm going to try to keep it in its spot. So where I have a lot of salt, you'll see I'm not making sure my paint is nice and thick. Going right over the top. So it left that salt in place. I don't want to try to, I'm not trying to move it. So make sure I have a lot of paint on there. You can use a dabbing. So if your salt wants to move and you want to leave it, you can dab your paint on because it's okay to have texture in this paint finish. Can you pull the window down? I actually am probably going to add a little bit more salt to this coat because this drawer is a little light on the salt and I do want these to be a little heavier. And if I add it to this coat, I'm just going to get spots where it doesn't go all the way down to the wood, it just goes down to the yellow instead. But here's another spot where my salt is a little thicker. I did it heavier in the corners.
So doesn't the salt start to break down
It
the
does.
components of the paint? Like the integrity of the paint. But that's kind of what you're after, right?
Yeah, so here is the deal. I'm trying to mimic what milk paint does. So if you guys have ever used milk paint before, milk paint gets chippy like this because it doesn't adhere. That's why it gets chippy. So I want this paint to not adhere in spots. I'm putting a resist in between my piece and the paint so that I can scrape this paint back off. You guys will see in the next step, I'm literally gonna go at this with a scraper, and I want my paint to come off in spots, but it still has the adherence of a chalk paint where the salt did not go.
So what made you pick this versus sea spray?
I could have used sea spray too. I wanted to try something a little bit different. Sea spray, the thing with sea spray is you can stir it to get it more coarse or less coarse. I didn't want it to turn into a fine mixture, which would have just been because I overstirred and then I end up with just thickened paint. I didn't want thickened paint. I wanted some texture. The other thing I'll say about sea spray is sea spray attaches really well. That stuff dries like concrete. It's not coming off. So, and that's a good thing about sea spray, because if you're doing a decorative finish and you want to leave the texture on, you want it to dry hard and, you know, not be easily removable. I wanted something that I could take back off again. So this is what I chose. I'm just showing you guys one method. I'm not saying there's not others. I always say that if there's something else that works for you, use that method by all means. But I didn't use sea spray because I was worried, number one, that my mixture would get too fine, and number two, that I wouldn't be able to get it back off again. So this is my second coat here. This is the green over the top. I did add a little bit more salt on this one. You don't have to if you feel like you got enough on your first coat.
So to answer really quick Denise's question, it does not break down completely.
Not everywhere, because I've got plenty of space where I don't even have any salt in it. And then there's going to be spots where it doesn't attach into my paint at all. It just ends up floating on top, and that's fine. I'll just brush, some of this will brush away, some of it will leave me chippiness. You guys are going to see right here. So this is an example of dried paint. It dried with my salt in it. One thing I want to say about this is when I was working on this finish last night, I had to leave you guys a drawer that I could do on camera. Ideally, I would not let this set up overnight. I would have liked to have scraped this last night because it's going to be a little bit harder to scrape than what the rest was. So I would say let it dry for maybe an hour or so and then come back and scrape it before your paint is fully set up. This is going to be a little harder to scrape than the rest of the piece was that I did last night.
What's in your bottle that you were spraying?
Water, just water. So all I've used is my paint and water and of course salt.
What happens if you overspray it?
It's going to get drippy. It's going to make your paint...
Because you're reactivating the paint.
Yeah, it's going to... well, my paint, all that I've sprayed it on is wet paint. I'm not going to use it on this here, unless I have a hard time scraping, and then I may need to wet my paint a little bit. But I've put it on wet paint over here. And all I'm trying to do is make the salt set into my paint. You can sit here and press it all down, but it starts sticking to your fingers.
Now, what's the color of green? The mixture? It's
a mixture. So I mixed evergreen, French linen, and a little bit of collard greens. And I want it to be like, this piece is supposed to look like one that you went and found at the flea market, and it's in its original condition. It's going into a home with a farmhouse style. So, and she wanted this genuine farmhouse look. We looked at a whole bunch of pieces. Most of them were done with milk paint. And what true milk paint is it's a powder, and you dissolve it, and the paint itself, it doesn't adhere very well. That's how you get the chippiness in milk paint. So this is a way you can get the chippy look of a milk paint, but still get the adherence of your chalk mineral paint on your whole piece. So you guys are going to see now, I'm going to go at this with a scraping, with a scraper blade, a metal scraping blade. And it's not going to take this whole paint off, but it is going to take off my salt. It does take some elbow grease, but I'm scraping that texture back out of my paint.
Throw some water on.
Yeah, it is a little bit hard to get out because this did dry overnight. And it's messy, but it pulls the salt back out of my paint. And then if there's spots where my scraper blade scrapes my paint, That's okay too. I mean, you guys can see how distressed this finish is. Like, I'm beating this up. I want it to be chippy and old. I want to see some of the yellow. I want to see some of the wood. So this one has a little bit less salt in it.
I also got to say that this speaks volumes about the quality of the paint.
Yeah. I'm going at it with a scraper blade, and it's not. My paint is not lifting.
So regardless of it being salted or not.
So if you were doing this with a true milk paint, it doesn't even stay attached on its own, let alone going at it with a scraper. Saz, can you get my sander? The round one. So, oops. Yep, there we go. I just scraped too much. That's okay. I can add paint back on if I want to. So at the same time, my scraper blade is leaving like scratch marks in my paint. Like, I'm beating this finish up. I've got spots of my yellow peeking through, spots of my wood peeking through. I'm not happy with this spot right here. So then what I did, after I felt like my whole drawer was scraped, and the chunks of my salt are out of it, and it just has left all these pock marks. Those are weaknesses I created in my paint finish where the pocking is. So I'm going to take my, this is my random orbital sander, and I've got a 220 grit sandpaper on here, so it's fairly fine.
I'm going to step back so it doesn't get so loud.
Okay, so what the sanding does is it's going to take those pock marks. Now it's a big mess and I'm going to have to clean this off. But it's going to expose even more of the yellow underneath. It takes down that texture because I don't want it to feel like I've got, you know, bumpy salt on my paint. So this is a smooth finish. I'm going to spray it with water just to imitate putting a clear coat on it. And then it really brings out, then you can really see the yellow peeking through. You can really see some of the pocking in the paint. You can see the scrape marks. So that's the overall process. And then I'm going to put the clear coat on it and it'll make this rich, and then I'll probably add even a brown wax because this is such a distressed finish. And I really want it to have a ton of character. Like, I want people to walk into this woman's bedroom and think that she really found this, you know, old piece sitting in someone's house and left it in original condition. So this one still needs a little bit more scraping for me to get the last of this salt out. But that's the basic process. So I've got a smooth finish, my yellow peeking through, my wood peeking through. My paint is still smooth, it has a little bit of pocking in it. It looks like it had been peeling or chipping, but I know that it hasn't because I just went at it with a metal scraping blade and it's on there.
So let's go start to now. What have you done?
Okay, first thing I did was prep my piece. I cleaned it well with White Lightning. I put on a coat of Dixie Belle Boss, which is a stain and odor blocking primer. That was because my piece needed it. I was concerned about some bleed through from this one. That's why I used the Boss. So once my piece was prepped, I added the mustard yellow with my sea salt embedded in it with the water. Then, without removing any salt, I put the green over the top. This one I chose to add more salt because I wanted a little bit more pocking on this. And then from there, I go and let it dry for an hour, what did I let it dry for? Probably an hour last night I let it dry. And then go to town and scrape that salt out with a scraper blade. And then you can use your sander to get to smooth it out. So this is 2 coats of paint just with salt embedded in the paint, and it gave me some cool texture and some cool pock marks on my paint. So that's kind of it.
And then colors once
I'm
again.
going to spray this with water so you guys can see. I'm going to put a clear coat over this. This is unsealed paint. But you guys know when you seal the paint, it makes the colors all that more vibrant. So I'm spraying the water just to kind of mimic what it will look like when my paint is sealed. And you can really see the mustard coming through. You can see where I've scraped at the paint and it's kind of weathered there. You can see places where my wood came through. But like this right here is beautiful. It looks like chippy paint. But it's still smooth. I don't have, you know, I don't have salt still embedded in there. The sander and the scraping takes all that salt out.
Now for this technique for you, what salt did you use?
I used, this is Morton's coarse kosher salt. So I think any kind of salt would work. I don't see why Epsom salt wouldn't work. I just went to the kitchen section at Target and I grabbed what had a, you know, nice coarse grain to it.
And then you let each layer of paint dry how long?
Yeah, I let each layer of paint dry in between. So I would say this only has probably an hour or so in between each layer of paint. Takes a little bit longer because the paint went on thick and then we added the water on top of it. So it's going to take that paint a little bit longer to dry. But once you see that it's dry, you know, this is the one we just did. The paint starts turning to that chalky color. It'll lose the glossiness. Go ahead and come back and put that second coat over the top of it.
So just to kind of recap, no, the salt did not go in the paint.
I didn't
You painted,
mix it in. I put it
then
on
the
top.
salt went on top.
Yeah.
You sprinkled it, and then you sandwiched it with another layer of paint.
Yeah. And then scraped it all out. And that paint just creates a resist. There's going to be spots where the paint embedded further down and you get all the way down to the wood. There's going to be spots where it embedded only into, you know, the color of the underneath. There's going to be spots where it didn't embed at all and it just brushes off, and that's okay. So I put it on a little heavier than what I actually wanted so that I can get, you can get heavier. You know, for example, this corner right here, I've got heavy salt versus, you know, the center of this area right here.
Yeah, it's called random.
Is a little thinner. So I know this is going to stay mostly green right here. This will be heavy on my yellow, if not all the way down to the wood, you know, going across the top here. But places where your drawer would naturally distress, around the hardware, around your edges, inside these reset panels, it's probably not going to be as distressed because it's not going to get as much finger wear. This is a flat drawer here, so I did just around the edges, heavier on my salt. Let me spray this a little too so you can see the color. And then in the middle, it's just got a little bit, you know, some around where my hardware will be. And I'm probably going to come back and I'm going to wet distress this as well, which means I'm going to get my paint wet. Wet distressing is just distressing while your paint is wet.
Now you only put the salt on the painted pieces, right? Not on the sides, but on the face of the drawers.
I did it on the sides as well.
What?
I did. So Sean was here last night with me. I took this dresser and I laid it on the side. Let me turn this.
I'm sorry, as far as the drawers too.
What do you mean?
The sides of the drawers. You didn't do anything to the sides of the drawers.
I
but
didn't.
You did that here.
No, all my drawer sides are just wood.
Okay.
So I made sure that they were covered in paint. But I might do, I think I'm going to paper these actually with a cute, you know, retro looking paper that I have. Speaking of papers, you guys, if you guys follow me, you guys know that I love Spoonflower gift wrap for papering. Did you know I found out today that Spoonflower does not offer their gift wrap anymore? I'm going to have to find a new source for custom papers. I was so upset about that this morning.
Where do I send the hate mail?
Yeah, no, I already emailed them and it's confirmed they don't offer it anymore. So I tipped this piece onto its side, and then I tipped it onto its back, and then I tipped it onto its other side. And I did the same process over the sides. I'm putting the water on just so you can see the color difference. But you can see where I tipped it on its side and I put some salt in my paint. So my sides are going to match the front of my piece. I did the same thing to the front. Actually, I haven't scraped it yet now that I look at it. There is salt in here. Oh, another thing I want to say, if you're a mouth breather, close your mouth when you're doing this, you end up with a mouthful of salt. Just a side note. This is durable paint, I'm telling you. I've got some here in my sides.
Now, there's nothing wrong with having salt staying in the paint. You don't have to scrape it all out, right?
But I am trying to get it smooth. So even if little bits of, tiny bits of salt do stay in my paint, I'm coming back with my sander and sanding it smooth. So this is a good example right here. It has texture to it, but it doesn't have full grains of salt still poking up out of my paint. So I'm pretty confident that this is fairly well removed. Once I've scraped and I've sanded it, there may be still fine spots in there, but you can see there's texture, but there's no full bumps of sand or of salt still poking up into my paint. It feels smooth. I'm confident that I could top coat this. I've gone on it with a scraper blade. It's adhered to my piece. You know, it looks a little thicker in spots than others. Sean said to me last night, he said, you know, I see a lot of pieces where I do distressing with sandpaper, or I do distressing with waxes, you know, dark waxes. He said that looks genuine. It looks genuine. So this look will not be for everybody.
This looks genuine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah, this looks genuine.
I don't know who that guy was, but he sounds very smart.
Yeah.
Like a genius.
He was having a moment.
In his own mind.
So just go through, make sure you scrape your piece good. You know, inside some of these areas, I'll come back and get them with sandpaper. But it looks genuine, and that is the look that I'm going for. So this may not be to your taste, but this is absolutely what my customer requested, and I feel like this technique achieved it. So that's why I'm sharing it. I know people might be skeptical and be like, what is she doing? She's crazy, using kitchen items to refinish my dresser, but it worked.
Michelle says, I live in a place that has salty air and it deteriorates everything, so she knows this look well.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. I mean, normally you wouldn't achieve this by salt. This would be just by being an old paint finish and being, you know, older types of paint that don't adhere as well. That's how, what gives this chippy look. That's why people use milk paint, because milk paint gives you that real, genuine, distressed look.
So you don't anticipate any problem with clear coating this and the salt reacting to the clear coat?
I don't anticipate it. No. I actually am thinking I'm going to use wax on this because it's such a vintage looking finish. Nothing is more consistent with a vintage looking finish than wax. So I'm thinking I'm going to use waxes on it, but I can't think of what, when I'm looking at this, I don't see salt still in my paint. It's not still sticking up. It might be embedded into it, but no, I do not anticipate that it's going to be an issue. So that's kind of it. I'm going to finish this piece up. I will take pictures over the next couple days. I'm not as happy with how it's scraped away after letting it dry. I much preferred scraping it away when it was newly dried. So don't let your paint dry overnight on this one. Come back and scrape it within a few hours of putting it on, and the salt scrapes away much, much, much better than it did on the drawer that I left to dry overnight. So like these two that I just did, I'm going to finish these up tonight. I'm not going to let them dry like this one because it scraped away so much nicer. So I think that's it. You guys may think I'm crazy tonight, but I really like how this looks. So I'm going to do a faux wood finish on the top. I'll probably take video on that and post that on my YouTube channel. Versus doing it live, so you guys get that too. And then you'll have both videos on this piece. So thank you guys. I will be live here next Thursday as well. I'm also live all next week in the World of Chalk Paint and Distress and Decoupage is the name of the group. If you're not a member in there, go join, because I'm doing a live series all next week, and it's not going to be painting. It's going to be informational. We're going to talk about stuff like staging, like brush care, like doing Facebook Live. We're going to talk about some different kinds of stuff. So go join me in there next week. Every day at noon Eastern, I'll be live in there. Otherwise, I'll see you here next Thursday. Thanks, you guys.